They say your property manager will handle everything. That's bullcrap. Here, me and my COO, my chief of operations over at Bedrock, talk for basically an hour, talking about the biggest fiasco that we ever had to unwind because of a property manager. I apologize for the video quality. I apologize for the audio quality. They're both okay, but not great. We filmed this over a year and a half ago. We've just gotten around to editing it. I hope you like it.
You and I are like, what the hell? Like, this is taking this 5 months. This should have been a 3 month project. And so we really get firm with them. And that's when we realize it's all lies and
Yeah.
incompetence.
And so they took over the property. They forgot to turn the utilities on. And winter rolls around while it's vacant and they're trying to get the property onboarded. But they took some photos, they posted them, and then they waited for a couple of potential tenants to call in and say, hey, I'm interested in viewing this property. And then next thing you know, I get a phone call from the HOA saying that there's water flowing out of the garage door. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I call Mind, I get someone to go over there. Turns out they forgot to turn the utilities on. So it was winter, multiple pipe bursts, and the house was flooded. It was probably in the ballpark of $70,000 worth of damages. Call insurance. You can get this all taken care of. That's fine. However, mine just did not want to take responsibility. Anytime you onboard a property, turning on the utilities is one of the first things you do. Long story short, we get the insurance thing filed, and then they said, sorry that has all happened. We're going to take care of it for you. We'll handle all the insurance so you don't have to. If you're familiar with insurance, which I used to work in insurance, so when it comes to homeowners, there's typically two categories. There's several categories, but typically 95% of insurance claims will fall under what's called mitigation and restoration. So the mitigation is going in there, removing the affected material. So, your all the drywall soaking wet, it's got to be removed because it's just going to get moldy. It's drying all the affected material and tearing it out. And then the restoration is just putting everything back, putting new drywall, new flooring, whatever. Now, they had their own partnership, right? They've had good contractors come in and work on our house before, so we just kind of assume they were doing fine with that. And then I find out that this contractor is not getting paid, and he calls me directly, and we talked for a while. And I was like, "Look, I let me call the insurance, figure out what's going on." And turns out insurance was doing fine. I submitted the claim, and then Mind was going to handle it. Mind got the money. They told the contractor to go in there and start working. I think they gave him a little bit of money up front. And then they just spent the insurance money on a separate property.
Yeah, completely separate
And,
property on the same plan.
yeah,
We're just going to pay all these other bills on some other property. Like 21
so
grand if you get a low balance on your account because there's been some expenses. We just keep an eye on it. We update it once or twice a week, right? This property was a huge problem because we had these enormous insurance claims and this huge damage. Their pipes burst. It had destroyed the main wall of the home in the middle, like the big wall where kind of all the pipes run through the middle of the house. It was this huge, huge claim. And so we knew it was going to be vacant for a while. We knew we were going to have to do some claims. We knew there were going to be some expenses. And so for a while, we just let mine do their job, right? 3 months, right? Greco said 3, 4 months, we should be able to be out of this.
it was furious. Okay, so before I'm gonna stop right there because number one, we're letting mine do their job, but we're reaching out a couple times a week, and I was getting updates, and these updates were just incorrect, right? They were not telling me the truth. They were saying, "Hey, we're at this stage in the process. We're waiting on this to happen," or they were saying like, "Hey, we sent in this estimate, and we're just waiting for insurance to approve it," or "Hey, we got these contractors. They're working on this right now," but it wasn't actually happening. So they were essentially lying to us, telling me like, "Oh, hey, like we're working on the flooring right now." When it was, "Oh, hey, like we called a couple people to get some bids for flooring." And then like a week later they get all these bids. And then they say, "Okay, cool, we'll just email insurance 7 different bids." Long story short is they don't know how to do insurance claims. And I was getting all these impressions that the project was moving along so swiftly. Once I realized it wasn't, and I was getting these phone calls about not being paid, I stepped in. They hadn't even gotten all the funds approved for mitigation. They got some prepayment up front to get the project started, which they gave the contractor a couple grand and then they spent it the other. And I hopped in there and I think within 48 hours I had discovered where the money went missing, right? They spent it on these wrong properties. Mine didn't even know. I was looking for explanations.
It was seriously 2 days. What took mine from whatever that polar vortex happened, right? Through I'm going to say May of 2023. So a solid 5 months of incompetence and just the worst property management while all the time leading us along and being like, oh, yeah, no, not a big deal. And this is on our problems property list. So we're talking it in our executive meeting saying, hey, how is it going? It should be done by 3 months in, right? And then in May, you and I are like, what the hell? This is taking this 5 months. This should have been a 3 month project. And so we really get firm with them. And that's when we realize it's all lies and
Yeah.
incompetence, and that they didn't know how to manage an insurance claim and that they hadn't had funds approved. And then they start shooting us all the internal monologues between them. And so they're claiming, hey, we've been totally on it, but this insurance company is totally freaking morons and they can't do it. And they're the worst insurance company. So you get on the phone with the insurance company and you're like, hey, I hear you guys are morons. And they're like, let us tell you about morons. And so then they tell you, hey, we've sent money, we've sent money, we've sent money. We need progress updates. Why am I hearing from the contractor that the money has not been sent to him? And then you had to go back and reconstruct the finances and be like, okay, they sent you 21,000 and change.
It just turned into a massive blame game. And like I said, I think in 48 hours, I found where all the money went. So we got funding for the repairs. I got the contractor paid all the missing money. There were what's called a supplemental invoice, which is just when the contractors go in there and they say it's going to cost X amount of dollars to fix this. And then as they are doing the mitigation, they remove the drywall, they find more problems. So a supplemental is just, oh, hey, as we were going through, we found X amount of more damages than we thought. Here's a supplemental invoice to fund those repairs that insurance should cover. Mine had that. They hadn't gotten it approved. I don't know what they were doing. So I got the supplemental approved. I got the contractors and get us estimates on that and make a bid all in like 48 hours. And I got them to sign all the documents. And I want to say within 48 hours, we got like 50 grand of funding from insurance to get all the reconstruction started. 15 here, 15 there, 15 here. But I was getting the whole thing rolling. And I think when I stepped in, it took maybe a month to get it from not even completed estimates to finishing the mitigation, getting everyone paid, and the reconstruction done in about a month or maybe a month and a half too.
Yeah, we had
Which,
it back on the market and rented by like July. So May, June, July. So maybe a month and a half, two max to get the whole thing done. Because when you stepped in, it was at zero. And so it took them 5 months to not even start the project. And it took us 2 months to finish the project. All of this to say, people buy properties all the time. And they're like, my property manager is going to be able to handle this. And that could not
yeah,
be farther from the truth. It could not be farther from the truth. Anyone who's like, I'm going to have perfectly passive real estate, I'm just going to let my property manager deal with it, that it is just a lie that has been told in this industry so many times because everyone would like to think that property managers are competent and property managers are after your best interest and property managers know what they're doing and know how to handle problems when they occur. And that has just not been our experience.
Now that you've joined us for that video talking about how incompetent property managers can be at times, I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see another interesting video where we talk through the ins and outs of running hundreds of properties a month, helping our clients buy thousands of properties, I would go watch The Hidden Lies Behind Real Estate Investment. It is a hour-long video where I get interviewed by Spencer Sutton over at Evernest. They run 24,000 doors with their property management firm. He gets to kind of grill me on the things we do and why we think it's valuable. And he has an opportunity to be like, hey, that's not true. What you say about property managers isn't true. It was an amazing conversation. I love Spencer Sutton over at Evernest. I would go watch Hidden Lies Behind Passive Real Estate. I'll put that right here. You have a good day. Bye-bye.